you all hear me? Let's go thumbs up if you can hear me. Super. So we shall start. Let me see where you can stand. I'm filming it. In fact, hang on a second. I've got about 5 cameras set up to make sure that it is filmed, so everybody that is watching can have a copy so you can watch it back, or those of you that aren't able to watch it can actually see what I've got on the screen. I think we've managed to work out how to mirror it, so you should be able to read what's up on here. So what we're going to do, we're going to start talking today about neurocentric biomechanics and what they are and how they affect us day to day and why they're important. I suppose that's the main thing I want to sort of start and get you thinking about how and why thinking of that sort of way can make a huge difference for you. So starting, excuse me, who am I? So I am Lottie Hutchinson. I'm mum of 3. I've got 2 littlies and then a 15-year-old. 15-year-old isn't mine, but he is a massive part of our family, massive part of our horsey world. By trade, I'm a graduate sports therapist, so I'm not a physio. I'm not anything else. I'm a sports therapist. But since then, my sports therapy journey has sort of led me on to find new paths and new paths. So from my sports therapy degree, which I did in 2005, I found the running school in London, which I became a running technique coach, which is where I was first introduced to neuro stuff and movement mapping. And my question of why, as you'll see soon, literally comes from here. So as soon as I understood a little bit, I needed to know more and I needed to know more. And that's where I've then gone on to become a movement re-educator through the running school. I then moved on to Z Health because Z Health seems to be the only thing that's actually given me answers to my neurocentric questions, the whys, the whats, the hows, the weird stuff that I don't really understand why it worked, how it's worked and everything now. So I'm currently in my process of doing that university degree. I've done my first 2 modules and I am absolutely full of information that I cannot share quick enough and fast enough with everyone because the stuff that I'm starting to learn is absolutely amazing and it's really easy to apply. So that's me as an injury therapist. Me as a rider, I'm a Western rider by trade, sort of. This is my current boy. He's a 3-year-old. He's currently being backed. But I haven't actually ridden myself for a number of years because I've bought babies and then lost them, unfortunately, before they've got to a point where they can be ridden. So I've had a bit of a nightmare journey myself. But back in my youth, I used to compete for the UK. I used to compete all over the country. But my massive passion is with horses, but my education is with injuries and movement. And what I've started to do this year is marry the 2 together because I've got a job that I love and I can apply it now to help people that are doing things that I absolutely love and are probably a lot better than I am at doing it. But if you say to me, this is the movement I want to be able to do, I will be able to help you learn and understand on how you can get to that movement by looking at where the discrepancies and stuff come from. So I suppose that's me in a little bit of a nutshell. If you'd like to know more about me, ask me lots of questions, but we'll get on to the interesting stuff. So my clicker's broken as well, so I apologise. I'm going to keep coming up to my computer. So I suppose a little bit of an intro of why I've put on tonight. Today I wanted to go through a little bit about what neurocentric biomechanics is, why it's the future of rehab. So I sort of want you to understand a little bit about actually what neuro is, where we're at in the world with education, and how the approach can help everyone. We're going to look at how you can assess yourself today. So today you're going to be able to go away from here understanding how you can start to apply things to yourself, to have a look at whether things are helping you. We're going to look at how you can start using a neurocentric approach day to day, so it doesn't have to be in your riding miles. And we're actually also going to give you some techniques that you can start using, which will help your riding, but you're going to be able to apply to your day-to-day life. So you're going to have lots of stuff that's going to come from both sides. Now, all of your rehab doesn't have to be in the saddle. And the reason being is the more you do it in the saddle, the more you're going to compensate because the more you're going to get used to your horse's movement. So what is neurocentric biomechanics, or neurocentric biomechanics, I suppose, to start with? Neuro means nervous system. So we're looking at the nervous system in the brain, and centric means center. So all it means is nervous system centered biomechanics. So we look at the brain as the primary driver and the nervous system, so it's communication on actually everything that we do. So the brain is the driver, it's the control center, it's your computer, and then all of your nerves that go down to everywhere, your muscles, your heart, your lungs, every single system that you've got are all communicated to via the nervous system. Now, biomechanics is a really funny term. Biomechanics is everyone looks for a perfect posture, is a lot of things that people come and talk to me about. What's my perfect posture? What should I walk like? Where should my foot be? How should I do this? Biomechanics, one thing in neuro is you need to understand that biomechanics change every minute, every second, depending on what you're doing. So most of you are sat at home or sat here in a chair. Your biomechanics will be different sat in a chair to what I expect it to be when you're standing up. And that's all to do with the threat that you're receiving at that time, which we'll go through threat in a second, but also the amount of energy your body is needing to use at that moment in time, but also your previous experience. So the last time that you sat in a chair in this position, the last time you sat and talked to somebody that chats very quickly, like myself, all of it is changing every minute. So I could say to you, right, here's the perfect posture, but it might be the perfect posture for me, but it might not be the perfect posture for you guys that sat here. And it would be wrong for me to say, I'd expect you all to be able to sit the same, because the nervous systems between all of us that are in this room at the moment are very, very different. I've had different experiences from when I was born to where I am now, to the same as every single person that's here and on Zoom. So don't ever think that biomechanics means this is what you need to be like, this is the perfect person, because you won't be that person because you're not their nervous system, okay? Biomechanics is the ability to move through a certain way. Now, I'll explain that again in a second because it goes into a little bit more detail and I don't want to jump ahead of myself. Neurocentric biomechanics, we also look at something called a threat bucket. So everything that you learn, do, want to do, your brain decides whether it's happy or not happy. There's two things. It does it based on previous experience and it does it based on current perception of threat. So how scary is what I want to do now? Is it going to kill me? Am I going to survive? Am I not going to survive? Have I got a bad experience from before? The last time it happened, did something happen? And you all make decisions based on that. And these will all be subconscious, completely 100% out of your control. You do not have control of those. You can start to take them into control once you understand a little bit more about how your brain works and how the system is working. So there's major things that affect neuro. The key things are, when we're born, we crawl, some of us do, some of us don't. We get up, we walk, we copy what our parents do, we probably have some trips and falls. But the things that start to make huge changes and differences in our nervous system is previous injury, so times of when we've had a threat and taken a threat towards our body, concussion. So we were having a chat in here just before about post-concussion syndrome. Concussion plays a major, major effect on the brain. It's a major injury that starts to have a huge effect on balance, eyes, ears, coordination, as well as day-to-day sort of talking and chat. The lack of use. So if you don't use something, if you're right-handed or left-handed, if you do something the same way, filling a hay net is a classic example, you fill it the same way every single time. You'll be great at filling it the same way every single time. Try and do it the other way, it feels as if someone's tangled you in the net. And it's because you haven't practiced it. Now, in time, if you practice it, the lack of use will go and you'll find that these things get easier and easier. That's called neuroplasticity, which we'll go into in a second. And the other key effect is life. What is going on in your life at that moment in time? Because that all plays a huge, huge part on your body chemical status. And that's where we can start to have an effect on making positive improvements. That doesn't mean that you need to go and be really zen and you need to go and have lots of breathing time and meditation. It works and it helps, but you also need to be able to take things out of your stress bucket. And you need to know when you're on a good place and when you're in a bad place. And when's right to train and when's not right to train. When's right to get on the horse, when's not right to get on the horse. And there's things that I'm going to give you today that will give you a really good telling on when that's good. Okay, so I've got two quotes for you. And this sort of sums me up. Give a man a fish and feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. So my idea of using neuro, and anybody that works with neuro will understand that if I can tell you how to do something, if I do a movement for you, so you come in and I do a massage or I do a mobilization, that's great. I've done that movement for you. So you are no longer needing to do that movement because I've taken your ability for you to control it out of your hands. If I teach you how to do that movement and you lose that movement because you have another fall, you know how to go back and relearn that movement. And that's why it's really important to understand that actually you have to understand the basics of neuro, but you have to understand how you can fix yourself. So I think this is a great quote that actually sums up that side of things. And this one's my favorite one for horse riders, because we are creatures of habit and routine, and there's no time for anything else. But we've got to make a change to get a change. If you do the same thing day in, day out, without making changes, you're going to get the same output. So you've got to make a change to get a different output. So if you're riding and you get back pain every time you ride, we need to make sure that you're changing something each time either you ride or an exercise that you're doing to help with your back pain, which then will change that as you go on. So this is one that's lived with me for a long time. I live a lot by this myself. When I get stuck in a rut, I always come back to this quote, and I think it's something that will sit with a lot of people thinking, right, okay, I've got to do something for me in order to make a bigger change across a bigger picture normally. So, right. It's going to get a little bit sciencey, but I promise I won't go too much into it. So we've got here the brain and the nervous system. What's its job? So the brain is the control center, and in the brain we've got lots of different cortexes. We've got cortexes at the front, which start to have all of our movement maps in it. We have sort of things like our decision making, all of the nice things that we've got for being a human that animals don't have tend to sit in front of the brain. Then we have the next bit of the brain that comes back, which is the parietal cortex. And in there sits a lot of sensation. So a lot of your touches, a lot of not decision making, a lot of touch, a lot of sensation stuff, a lot of cognitive stuff sits in there as well. And the reason that I'm going through the segments of what we've got in the brain is these are the two key areas that we need to be able to use when we're starting to look at neurocentric movements. Now, the nervous system is then communication system. So in the brain, we go back through the sections, and at the bottom, we've got something that's called the cerebellum. And in the cerebellum, we've got the majority of our neurons, which is the things that drive our nervous system. And that's where all of our balance, accuracy, and coordination come from. Do we need balance for riding? Yeah. Do we need coordination for riding? Yeah. Do we need accuracy to ask our horses exactly what we need to do? Yeah. So we can play with the brain, and we can play with the movement maps, but we need to make sure that the cerebellum is the thing that's doing a lot of the work, and that is where the driver comes from. And you get quick wins. We all like quick wins. Quick wins are the way to go forward, okay? So we need to make sure that we understand that actually there are things that have to happen in a certain order. There are things that happen in a certain order because it keeps it out of our conscious control. It's how the body is derived and is has sort of developed. We then also have, so there's two parts to there's lots of parts of the nervous system, but there's two key things or key elements that I'm going to get you to have a think about today. Is we've got the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And basically what we are is sympathetic is fight or flight or freeze. And then we've got your parasympathetic, which is like your rest and digest and your chill out type end of the scales. Now we sit on this like a sliding scale. So like you get with the old speakers where you can turn the volume up and down, and we sit on that scale at any point in the day, and things will take us up and things will take us down. The higher we are to a sympathetic nervous state, the more on alert, on edge we are, and the more likely we are to make rash decisions. The more that we sit on the parasympathetic state, the more likely we are to not make a decision quick enough, be slow. And these are all things that play a major part that come out of our control, but we can learn how to control these within the nervous system. So we go on to Neurocentric Biomechanics for helping everyone. And I think I put that on my slide to start with, mainly because everybody has a nervous system. And if it's not a nervous system that's not working, unfortunately, we're not alive. So it is something that we need to make sure that everybody understands. It doesn't matter what you've done, what your history is, what your injuries are. If you've got something you want to achieve and there's something that you want to get out of your life, your nervous system has something called neuroplasticity, which is the ability to mold and constantly change. And I use a lot of this in my work day to day. And I suppose to explain a little bit of my day-to-day work, I do a lot of neuro stuff. I work a lot with stroke patients. So somebody that's had part of the brain that's had some death in it, it's got cells that have died, and I start to reteach them how to do movements that they've been told they can't necessarily do again. And it's because the brain starts to remap these movements in other areas. So because we've all got a nervous system and we can all do neuroplasticity, we can all learn absolutely anything. It just takes time, effort, And sometimes your injuries are the things that are your threat response that stop you. So it's make a goal and then take baby steps towards it. Everyone can assess and reassess the threat reaction. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a couple of movements, and I'm going to show you how we're going to test for that threat reaction. But before we do that, can you all grab your phones out and bring up your stopwatch? I'm going to go through something that we call the CO2 tolerance test. Let me just change my stopwatch. Now, the CO2 tolerance test starts to talk to us about looking at the chemical status of the body at that current moment in time. So what we're looking at is actually how well your body can cope and tolerate the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the system, but it will also tell us where we're sitting on that parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous scale. So what we're going to do is you're going to take 3 normal breaths in and out. So you're going to sit and you're going to go in and out. You're going to do 3 breaths, and then on your third one, you're going to inhale as much as you can. You're going to start your stopwatch, and then you're going to exhale and hold for as long as you can until you physically cannot go any further. When you cannot go further and you need to breathe, you press your stopwatch. I obviously wasn't holding my breath the whole time I was talking. And you're going to get a time. And what I want you to do is I want you to write down that time, and I want you to make note of it. Okay, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to give us a minute or so. So we'll see how we get on. And I just want you to each get your own individual time, because we're going to reassess this. And this is going to be your starting of making a change, because this is something you can start to bring in your day to day. Okay, so 3 breaths in nice and normally. And then on the third breath, nice big breath in, and start the timer at the top. Super, so that was about a minute. If you're still holding your breath, excellent, keep going until you have run out. So I got a score of 37, okay? You don't all have to share your scores with me. I'm going to go through what the actual scales are. Now, that for me, because I know what that is low. I can normally get to about 60 seconds. It's probably the excitement, a little bit of anxiety, nerves of being able to do a talk that's probably brought mine down. I'm probably standing here in front of all of you whilst I'm doing it, puts a little bit of pressure on it. But that for me says that my nervous system currently has gone up the sympathetic scale. So what we look at, one of the things, and again, if you're suffering with hay fever, it might be slightly lower at the minute as well. But, what we look at, if you've got between 0 and 20, that you've got seriously poor breathing mechanics, and that your body is not able to cope very well with exchanging carbon dioxide and CO2. Now that could be for many reasons. It could be because you're stressed, it could be there's lots going on, it could be you're a bit tight in the chest. We find this a lot with people post-COVID, that they get quite tight through it. And there's lots of reasons why. So definitely areas to work on if you are between 0 and 20. 20 to 40 is classed as the normal low range. So you want to be able to sit between 20 to 40 as an unhealthy is probably unfair, an unfit individual that doesn't do much exercise. That's what they should be able to get to. An individual that exercises should be between 40 and 60, and an elite athlete should be 60 to 80. Now, did any of you get anywhere near 60 and 80? Shaking heads on Zoom? Yes, no? So I doubt it, because it's something that's all brand new. It's all something that we haven't. Oh, someone's made a comment. No, I love it. It's something that takes time, it takes practice, but we need to know that actually if we're getting on our horse and we're in this 0 to 20 section of our body, that actually are we going to have a good ride? Probably not if our normal riding, or we're normally sat at sort of 30 to 40 or 40 to 50, it shows that our brain and our body is not in a good way, and you're probably set for an argument. I say with a lot of my runners, if they have a score that is 10 seconds lower than their normal, they are banned from running. They are not physically allowed to go out for a run, because they're more likely to come back with an injury, or they're more likely to come back with something that they've picked up and causes lots more problems. So that's the first way that you can start having a look at where you are at chemically before you go and do anything. And it's a really good one to fit in at the beginning of your day. Okay, right. It's your turn to move. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry Zoom over there, and I'm going to show you a couple of movements and stuff. Yeah, I'm going to carry it over there. So you guys are coming with me. If I can unplug that. Right, you guys, can you stand up on the line and stand one side of the line for me? So what we've got, I don't know how much you can see, we've got a line that comes down the clinic. Hang on. There we go. So you can have shoes on, shoes off. So you're all standing like in a nice line. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the line that's here. I'll move the camera in a second so you can see me slightly better. We're going to stand and face forward, and we're going to step over the line and back, heel toe when you go forward, and toe heel when you come back. Right, I'm going to pop you on the floor because it's probably you're going to see me slightly better. So what we're going to do is you're going to go heel toe, toe heel, toe heel. So if you all stand up, just have a little bit of a go and see how it feels to step forward using the left foot first. See whether you get a rhythm going. That's fine, so as long as you're over the line and back. So heel toe forwards, and then toe heel when you go backwards. Lovely. Now everybody switch feet. So swap to the other side, and we're going heel toe, toe heel, toe heel. Got some cool movements going on down here. Good. Right, I'm just going to pick Zoom up off the floor. So, have we got one side that's harder than the other? Yeah? No? Super. Have we got one side that does something different to the other? Now, we're going to go back to it. Do the feet travel the same distance? So if I've got two dots, do they go the same distance forwards as they come backwards? And do they end up next to each other? So are they marrying up in that position as you do the movement? So just have a go, do 5 steps on each side and see whether they actually come accurately next to the other foot.
I always have my right foot back.
Do you?
But that's an injured one.
Okay. So see whether you can correct it and feel for what that correction is. A little bit further back. So I'm going to help you with both with that a little bit further back. So feel that, not so far. Again, not so far. There you go. Super. So that's your first movement. So make a note on that one of whether they feel the same left and right, and whether you can hit your accuracy equally on both sides. So do you have a right foot that steps further forward? Do you have a left foot that steps further forward? The next one, I'm going to see where, I want you guys to be able to see most of me. Right, my line's down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go slightly onto the ball of the foot. Be careful with this one.
Yeah, well, that's the first time I've used my foot properly.
Is it? It needs working. What we're going to do is we're going to go onto the ball of the foot slightly. We're going to lead with the left foot first, and you're going to go over the line and back as fast as you can in that rhythm. Now we want accuracy and coordination on this.
The wings.
Steps on the left, 20 steps on the right.
I can even do that.
Good, and then switch when you're ready.
I had my first set off after switching.
If you're not counting under that. Good. So on that one, can you feel, I'll come back over to the computer. Can you feel that they're different? Do they feel the same? Have you got the same coordination left to right? Is your balance the same? No. Could you feel how you three were drifting up the line slightly further and further as we were going? So you went one way and you were drifting. So again, what that's starting to look at is actually, how does your body talk to itself? Does it know what symmetry is? Does it know what balance is, what coordination is? Yeah, so straight away, the next one is brain and feet. Do they talk? Because actually there's quite a lot of things in between the brain and the feet, but unfortunately, in order for us to get to them, we need to be able to use all of this to be able to get down there, and we need to have feedback that comes all the way back up. So the key thing with this movement is can you do the movement? We have a number of people into clinic that come in and will not be able to lead with one foot. So if you found that you've just done them and that you switch every single time, so you get like a stutter or a double tap, the movement, your brain is switching you onto a dominant side. So you've got a neural discrepancy, left side to right side in that particular movement. And do they feel the same? We ride, and we want to be able to ride a circle lovely to the left and lovely to the right, be able to approach a show jump lovely to the left and lovely to the right. But actually, if we can't do a movement that's just stepping over a line back and forth and it feels different left to right, do we think we're asking the horse in the same way? Do you think our balance is there in the same way? Probably not, because we've got so many other things that we have to start to put into that when... Do you have to concentrate more on one side or another? Is there a side that you have to actually really think about? You can't have a conversation, you can't think about anything else. Are you less accurate with one side or the other? So making sure that you can get your feet next to each other and you've actually got that proprioceptive awareness of actually where your feet are. Do you need to be able to do this to ride? I've just answered this. No, but your horse would rather you did. Because actually, when we pay for physios, chiros, the back person, the saddle lady, saddle man, if it's saddle man, the bit people, we pay all of this money to try and sort horses out, and 99% of the stuff, we don't actually look at what injuries we've had, how many times we've had concussion, even if we sprained our ankle as a kid, what that's had an effect on these sort of neural communication movements. So they are really, really key. They will not stop you riding, but they are key to be able to work on a balanced and controlled and collected riding. So why do we need these? Riding, we need some symmetry. We want to make sure we are looking the same left as we are right. We need rhythm. So when we were doing over that line and back in that position, have we got rhythm? Do we have double taps? Can we keep that coordination going? If we then did it backwards, can we carry on with that same coordination? Balance. Did we drift from one side to another whilst we were doing it? Did you drift the way, it'd be interesting for you three, did you drift the way that you would lean to when you're riding? Because a lot of times it will be that you drift to the way that you ride because you've got one side that opens up through the hips and the rib cage. Have you got the coordination to be able to do it, to be able to get that rhythm? And all of that you should be able to do whilst having a conversation with me about random brain stuff, because it should be a subconscious movement. You shouldn't have to think about walking over a line heel toe, and you shouldn't have to think about stepping over a line heel toe on the ball of, or sorry, moving over a line over the line on the ball of the foot at speed. It all should be subconscious. And that's what we teach. We teach you to be able to move in that particular way, or understand how to change it. So we're now going to go into something that I call assess and reassess. And this is one of the key things that's really important with neuro. And the more that you can learn to do this in your life, you will start to understand why neuro stuff, why you don't necessarily need stretch, why you don't need strength, why gadgets are not always right answer to stuff. And it's not because they're wrong, but it's because they might not be the thing that your body needs at that moment in time. So what I mean by that is assess and reassess is you have a movement or a thing or something that you do that movement, you do your exercise and you go back to it. And it could be you do a movement, you ride, you get off and you retest that movement and your movement goes no. So for example, a toe touch. If you can touch your toes before you get on the horse, you do your hour, 45 minutes, and then you get back off and you're like, I can't even get to my knee. Do you think that's quite threatening for your body? Yes, massively. So there's something that's going on whilst you're on board that will not allow you to relax, which says that you need to deal with that. And it might be that your horse has actually just taken off with you and you've come off and you're on edge like this, but you then might need to deal with that, and you need to bring yourself back down that sympathetic nervous scale, back to a parasympathetic state. So you need to learn about your body, and it's really, really important. So, and it means that you can tell it's a good day. If you are on a good day, it's a good day to ride. It's not good if you get on and your bucket is full. So this is okay. And there's lots of things that go into it. So we've got friends issues that go into it. We've got children that go into it. We've got finances, life stresses, life itself, work, family. There's hundreds of things that can all go into your bucket. And these get piled in, day out, all the time. And our bucket's got so much water that it can take. But the more that you take, the further you come up and you fill your bucket to the top, where you have your outputs. And your outputs are the area of where you start to get pain, where you start to become poorly if you've overdone it, or your nervous system will start to shut you down. So your performance, you'll be in a life and survival mode rather than performance mode. So the worse this comes up, the more it gets full, the more outputs you'll have as pain. Now, if you've got lots of things going into your bucket, what happens is your body won't tolerate it, and it actually starts to bring your tap down. So if you ever found that you've had a stressful day, and then the next day you get up and you're really anxious, then everything else is more stressful, because what your body's doing is saying, well, I didn't cope with that yesterday, so I'm going to tolerate a little bit less, and you'll find that actually some days your tap might be down here. And that is exactly when your CO2 tolerance test, if you normally get 60, 70, is then down here at 20, you are not able to tolerate much. So your body isn't going to cope. And that's why going for a ride, going to do something, adding to the stresses of your day isn't going to help your pain, fatigue, your ability to have a clear mindset on what you want to do. So the CO2 tolerance test that we did earlier is key to be able to tell you how far you are filling up your bucket.
But what happens if going for a hack out is going to make you get rid of all that?
It might do. It might do. So it might be that actually that is your one thing that starts to change your stresses, but there's things that you can do to change your CO2 tolerance test, which will give you an instant. And I'll go through those, because if you turn up at the yard, and we've all done this, we're short on time, we've got loads of things we need to do, we need to tack up, get on, go. And then you get on and you're like, right, okay, I'm on edge, I'm on edge, I'm on edge. There's things that you can do as soon as you're tacking up, or whilst you're doing things, that will actually start to get you to breathe, get you to calm down, and start to come down that sympathetic nervous like scale. And what you'll find is that you'll get on board and then you'll go. But if you don't, you'll probably find that you go the other way, you get off, you'll be tense, the horse will be having a bit of a moment. So yes, that might be your answer to actually bring your bucket down, as long as it's not already too full. If that makes sense. Yeah. Right. Next one. Your turn to move again. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get each of you to take your shoes off if you're wearing shoes. If you're at home and haven't got shoes on, fine. What I need you to do is find a surface that you can push against. So I'm going to use the wall that's here. I'm hoping that you guys can see. What I'm going to do is we're going to use the wall. I think you can see without me pulling the wall down. What we're going to do is we're going to place the back of our hand against the wall, and we're going to push into the wall until it feels like it's pushing us away. Now you want your feet hip width apart whilst you're doing it. So you're going to come, in fact, I'm going to move the computer. You guys can come and sit on Hugo. There we go. Hugo is my pommel horse in clinic, for those of you that don't know me. So can you see me from there? So I'm going to push into the wall, into that position, and I'm going to push until I start to lose my balance. So I'm going to push and push and push. I want you to just take note on how strong you feel through that shoulder. Next time, you do exactly the same on the other side. So find a bit of wall, have a go.
Resist.
Yeah, so you resist, so you push and you resist, and just want you to see how strong you feel in that position. Once you've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise with our toe. This is where you're like, Lottie's gone balmy. This is neurology. What we're going to do, you can't actually see me. You're going on the floor again, and I'm just going to go back this way. What we're going to do is you're going to place your foot behind you into that position, on the opposite shoulder to what you're pushing into the wall. So whichever hand you're going to push into the wall, whichever side you're going to push into the wall, you're going to go to opposite shoulder, opposite foot, and you're going to take it behind you, and you're going to push the top of your foot down towards the floor. So tuck the toes, you choose your good ankle.
Yeah,
Better ankle, yeah, other way around. So we're here, we're going to tuck, and then as soon as you've done a little bit of pressure trying to open the space that's on here. So no, so just the ankle, yeah, so just doing the ankle. Then once you've done that, go back to your wall push and see how you can push into the wall. You guys can sit back on Hugo. You feel stronger? Stronger? Yeah, super. So I've got 3 here that all said they felt stronger. How does it feel at home? We've got some thumbs up and stuff as well, which is perfect. So interestingly, how have I just increased your strength and I've just done an ankle mobility drill? So is it because I've given you loads of strength? Is it because I've given you some superpowers? It's not. It's because it's neuro. Because what we've done is we've just opened a joint. We've just made your body used to or being able to use something that it likes, and I'll explain why in a minute, to be able to get that movement. Okay, so do you need to do strength? No, not necessarily always. There is a place for it, but neurology might be your answer. I'm going to come back over here. So just to say that wasn't a fluke, I've already got it on the thing. It says got stronger. And it's because of ankle jamming. So what position do we put our ankle in when we ride? Do we close it or do we open it? We close it. We bend, you can't see, but I'm bending my knees to close that angle of the ankle, which is jamming the ankle. So it closes off that joint, and we've got multiple joints that come through that ankle that all start to make huge changes across the back force transmission. Physios, chiros, osteos, anatomy trains, fascia people, love this stuff. Yep, fascia, muscle slings, we've got joint movements, neural signaling, previous experience, all of these have a massive effect on your back force transmission. But do you know what? If you've got a joint that's blocked, it will not let you move. So you can work on all of those. And if you, it's like having a cog, it's probably the best way to describe it. You've got a cog that's going round and you put a piece of sand in it. It's not going to stop the cog from working, but it's going to make it slightly clunky. And the more clunky it gets, like we said earlier, unless you practice it, it's not going to get any better. So you lose some movement. So you might lose a millimetre of range. You're not going to notice that day to day. And then on the next day, you not use that range, so you go backwards in range again. So all of these start to make a difference on actually how you transmit force. Now, for those of you that don't know what back force transmission is, I didn't go through that bit in case you don't know. Basically, when our heel hits the floor, what we get is pressure that goes up the outside of the leg, of the bottom of the legs, outside of the calf, goes through the middle of the hamstrings, into the sacroiliac joint on the same side. It crosses over, so you've got like an X that goes here, crosses over into this part of the back, goes up here, into the back of the neck on the opposite side, and into the opposite shoulder. So if my brain says to me, I take a heel strike when I'm walking, we'll use for example, and I've got a block that something's saying in my ankle, the receptors are feeding back to my brain saying it's not happy. What happens when that block happens is it says, don't move so far. So it starts to take away the strength and starts to move and change your movements that you've got. So it will make you have a short stride. It will make you have less arm swing. No arm swing at all. With some people, you'll find that they walk like this. And it tends to be because of a blocking at the ankle joint. If you can't absorb that force, it's 100% not going to let you have any strength. So you're not going to be able to get through the ranges. You're not going to be able to use the fascia. You're not going to be able to use the neural signaling that you've all practicing and you're all doing within your rehab, I suppose, that you'd get if you went to a chiro, physio, osteo, that sort of thing. And don't get me wrong, these people are great. They do great things. They're just not looking at it in a neuro approach, which is very, very good. So why is it key? So ankle jamming, we don't want it because how many steps a day do we do? I bet the majority of you do at least 15,000, if not more than 15,000 steps a day. So if you're doing 15,000 steps, 15,000 repetitions, we'll put it, on an ankle that's slightly jammed, what do you think that does to your body? By the time you get to the end of the day, do you think it's happy or not happy? Is that going to cause a bit of an issue? Yeah, massively. So we've walked around a little bit, we've done some mucking out, we've done some bits and bobs, we then get on to ride. Do we think that's jammed up? Do we think that's then going to help us be supple through our shoulders, give through our hands, actually have movement through the thoracic spine? Probably not. It starts to tense us up through this area because we're blocked at the ankle. And who's got wobbly feet? Who's got these stirrups? Instructors will love this. Instructors, the feet that do this, and you're like, keep your feet still, and they're like, I don't know how. Is it because the body can't stabilize because the ankle's jammed? And it's a really common one, which is why I've chosen this. There are lots of others. It's a really common one where we get so many riders with this issue. One, because they've had ankle sprains. Two, because they've been over on their ankle when they've been in the field. But also because when you're in that ridden position, we normally have a closed ankle. If you're a show jumper, your stirrups are short, you close the ankle even more. So it does have a huge effect on your day-to-day movement. So what can you do? Well, actually, before you put your boots on to ride, you can stretch off your ankle. And do you know what? When you get back off, you can stretch off your ankle. You can fix all these things. So you can start to actually undo the bad stuff that's happening. So when you go for a hack, like we were saying earlier, that's your happy place. It brings you back up and down your sympathetic nervous scale. If one of your body's going, I don't know how to map, or I don't know how to understand my movement, right, I'm going to help. I'm going to give it a little bit of a help in hand. I'm in a happier place. I'm stronger. Right, let's go. Because you'll feel better for it. So that is ankle jamming. Right, we're going to get you moving again. I've got 3 movements this time. And this is where I'm going to take you back over again with me. So you guys are going to come and sit down here on the floor. So the first joint we're going to start with is we're going to start with ankles. Now, those of you that have followed me on my Facebook page, this is one of the exercises I've used on my Fix Me Friday that I've been doing. Just going to set that in there. So what we're going to do, can you see my feet? We are going to point the toes down and we're going to bring the toes up. And I want you to have a look and see whether you can bring the toes up in that position and bring them down. Do one foot at a time because you want all of your concentration on that foot. And I just want you to have a look, see whether you can do that movement first. Have we got that here? Good. And then the other foot. Cool. So we've all got really good compensations here. So whose quad's going at the same time? So when you do that, is the quad tensing in order to bring your toes up towards you? Can you keep the quad nice and relaxed whilst you go through that movement? Can you feel how the tension that's coming through there? So currently in clinic, I don't know if it's the same at home, we have got 3 sets of quads that are moving feet. So their brains have got their feet here at their knees, which is not ideal because that's actually, we've still got quite a way to go before we get there. So one of the things we need to be able to do is relax the quads off, disassociate. Doesn't mean that we don't need to associate it at a later date, but we need to disassociate the quad from the ankle joint. Okay, these guys are looking at me like I'm a complete alien now being able to go through and move that. So next part, I'm going to tell you what we're doing wrong first and then I'll fix it. Can you do that movement without leading with your toes?
Yeah, take it off right now.
Oh. So what we're going to do is you're going to go down, the toes are not going to go down, and you're going to come up. So your toes there, nice and relaxed, here, nice and relaxed. So that's toes leading. So here, see how my toes don't move?
Oh, move through the heel. Like pushing your heel down.
A little bit, yeah.
Still moving my toes.
Still moving your toes.
That one's better.
Got one side that's better than the other. Injured side versus non-injured side? No. Okay. So what we're going to look at, it's because we don't actually know how to ask that bit of our body to stop. So we're asking everything to go, but at the minute, if we can't get this to go and this to stop and these to stop, it means we can't move a joint independently. And if we haven't got clarity, I'm going to go on to movement maps in a second, but a movement map is basically how your brain knows how to ask a part of your body to move. So if you don't know how to move dorsiflex and plantarflex the foot into this position without the toes doing it, what do you think happens in your riding boot when you're doing rise and trot? Probably this.
Yeah, and I noticed that loads on my ride.
Yeah, so you might find you get black toenails, or yeah, you'll find that you get bruising on the top of your toes. It's a really, really common one. So the way to fix it, I'm going to face this way so you three can see me as well. We're going to use sensation, and this is why I went through the brain stuff earlier. Yeah, you can see me-ish. We went through the brain stuff earlier. So the way that I said that things go, the brain is fed from the bottom at the back, up, and then from the back to the front. So what we've got the sensory cortex, which sits in the parietal lobe, and then we've got the movement cortex, which sits in front of it. So we need to give it the sensory stimulation first. So what we're going to do, really, really, really technical, we're going to rub our ankles and tell our brain where we want the movement to come from. So on the top of your ankles here, you've got the section where there should be 2 tendons. You can bend your knees to get to them. And then all I want you to do is a good rub, 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 rub. On that side. We're then going to go exactly the same. Can you relax the quad? Can you do the movement without the toes getting involved? Any easier? Still harder?
Yeah. Massive difference.
Massive difference, yeah. So because sensory comes before motor, if you've got somebody that's got a numb area on their body, they will really struggle to get motor control in that particular area, okay? So things like scarring, people that have had C-sections, people that have had surgery of any sort. Ankle surgery is a really common one that we see quite a lot of, and they've got plates that they've had removed, so it's no longer a problem. They play major parts because actually that's an area of skin sensation that is different to the rest of it. And if you can't get some sensible feedback from the sensory cortex of the brain, is your ankle going to be quite dangerous? The threat response is going to be slightly higher. So we need to bring that threat response down. So the next way to help you, so you've got the rub, so you can start rubbing the ankle. We're also going to then look at where you need to think about moving from. So when you move, you guys might want to come over for a second. You're going to think about when you're wearing trainer socks, that you're going to use the line where the trainer socks come from. Or if you were to put your fingers on the 2 joints, so your malleoli, which is your ankle bones, either side, it's the joint that's just above that I want you to be moving from. So in the camera, it's here, along the top of my sock line there. So now I want you to be like Harry Potter, pure style of ankle, only move from that joint. And I want you to see what happens. You can rub it first if you want to as well.
You feeling rubbish?
Oh, awful.
Take Nurofen,
I
darling.
have. I've taken it for all day.
Oh, have you? You look a bit pale, actually.
How does that feel? Good. So have the toes stop going?
This quad still wants to go.
Yeah, so the quad still wants to go, toes want to go. This takes sitting at home and just watching it time to be able to get into that position. Okay? So next one, we're going to go on to pelvic tilts. Now this is a really common Pilates yoga movement. I'm going to lay on the floor. Again, another exercise that I've done on my feet. Right.
No.
What I mean by pelvic tilt,
you're breaking yourself. You don't want to break it.
put our fingers on our hip bones. That's the bit that sticks out here. And we're going to bring our back onto the floor into that position. So we're going to try and lower it down, but we're not going up into a bridge. We're not looking at bringing the bottom up off of the ceiling, off of the floor up towards the ceiling. So we're going to go tucking down, you're going to hold, and then you're going to come back to neutral to start with. So wherever your neutral stance is, wherever you lie, without having to put yourself anywhere. Now, have a go. I'm just going to go and help these guys understand where that movement needs to come from. Yes, in fact, lower back going onto the floor. Good. Can you feel one side's working, one side's not? That's. Can we get it? You've got one side that's working, one side that's not. Yeah.
It's very much no.
Are we up?
Yeah. This is making context at a different point.
Okay, so again, we've got a different movement. Does this hit first?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you put your hands on your hip bones, Can you feel the difference in timing?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. So that's part one. We're going to fix them in a minute. Part two goes the other way. So we're going to lay and we're going to think of the seat bones that we sit on when we're riding. We're now going to roll from a neutral spine. Our fingers are going to be moved down towards our toes. And you're going to think about trying to sit on those seat bones. So you're going to try and come up into this position. Now, if you struggle with the lower back, you'll find that this is quite pinchy. Go to where it's comfortable. Do not push through it. So you go into that movement as if you're trying to sit on the seat bones and come on back down. So you can see that creates, my back comes off the floor. You can see there's a big arch. You can probably see underneath it as we go through that movement. How's that feel? Wonky?
Hurts my back.
Hurts lower back.
Upper back.
Upper back, okay. Feels wonky, feels wonky. Okay. And I assume we've probably got similar feedback at home. So what we're going to do is we're now going to go into a different movement to fix this movement. So what we need to be able to do when we lay on the floor, we've got the hip bones on either side. We need to have a relaxed, neutral spine where you are not lengthening, you're not trying to change anything. And all I want you to do is push one hip up towards the ceiling. So you're going to go from here to here. So imagine you've put a marble in between your belly and you're going to roll it in between your hip bones. So you're going to push up and you're going to push up. Now, the movement comes from below the belly button and it comes from the legs staying still. The knees will move down, but they won't sway side to side as you're doing it. Okay? And if you can't do it, it means that you're not very good at riding circles. So it's the same side that you're still. Hard. Serious concentration going on in here. So now, using the heel of your hand, I want you to hook that into the hip, into that position. So you're going to hook it onto your hip there. On what you're going to do is you're going to push up into it. So you're going to use your hand to create pressure to allow you to know where you're pushing into. Push. That's how you ease it. There you go, there you go, keep going, keep going, keep going. A little bit more, keep going, keep going, keep going. Don't let this leg cheat. There you go. That's your shoulder trying to do it.
Yeah, I can do it with myself.
Use this hand then. It doesn't matter which hand that you use to hold that pressure. All you're trying to do is give yourself something to work into, so you've got some force that's pushing you down, to allow your brain to understand that actually that force that you're trying to do is going up, not normally closing the rib cage. Good. Good. Now go back to your forward and backwards and see how that feels. So your anterior and posterior tilts. Less pinchy, better movement, better control.
Backwards is better.
Backwards is better.
That's
Any change?
Yeah,
I'd say
much more flexible.
much more
Was.
movement. Yeah, super. So you guys are looking at my feet. So what that does is it starts to teach you how to use the pelvis, and we need this movement. We need that ability to be able to do it from here. But if we struggle to do it laying on the floor, knowing where the pressure needs to go, as soon as we start to put that into the subconscious, right, I need to be able to ride a circle, so I need my hips to be able to move into a certain position, or I need to be able to twist. Do you think you can get that movement? I think we'd struggle, really struggle. So the third part of the exercise that we're going to do today is going to be our shoulder blades. So I'm going to face away from you so you can see. I'll stand here, I'll face the camera this way, and then all of you can see me at the same time. So what we're going to do, we're going to stand, we're going to imagine the scapula that are here are going to come back together. what we're going to do is we're going to isolate our hands. So we're not doing it like this, like we're doing push-ups. We're going to isolate our hands now. You can have them down by your side, you can have your hands in front of you, or you can just have goodwill and know that it's coming from the shoulder blades. What you're going to do is you're going to squeeze the shoulder blades back together and back. So you're going to go here. Just going to take my jumper off because you can actually see slightly better. And I have put that on the movement. So we're going to go from here. We're going to squeeze the shoulder blades back together, and then from there, there to there. So you'll find that the triangular bones on your back are the ones that are squeezing together. So have a go. Well, I'm going to help you through because the same as we did with the ankle, we're going to now use touch. And there's my hands on the back. I want you to squeeze from here. There we go. Feel the difference. So, all in here. I'll interlock your fingers together because at the minute you're using the glenohumeral joints, cheek. So put your hands, hold them there, okay, and then squeeze down. There you go, now you can't cheat. Can you feel the difference? There we go. Squeeze from here. Aha. Sorry. Can you feel how that's all coming from here? What are we doing? This bit? And it's this, sorry. Squeeze. There we go, and back. And same again, squeeze. And back. Yeah, big fast. You must have squeeze. You do so. Yes, great. Yeah, squeeze. Squeeze back. Squeeze these if you try and break them, so try and pinch my fingers. Go to the top, so try and squeeze here. There we go. And then middle, relax and come back. Squeeze. There you go, this side better. Could you feel that? Yeah. Same again. There we go, well done. So we now have got glenohumeral joints that work separately to the scapular joints because they're slightly different areas of the shoulder, still part of the shoulder joint, and play a huge, huge part in movement. You guys can sit down for a second. It is only going to be a second, but you can sit down for a second. Right, I'm not sure why I'm plugging that in because we're going to be up and down again. So on PowerPoint, we have got, can you control it? And I mean, I really control it. So we've done the movements and I showed you briefly what they are and how to get better movement with them and how to improve that movement. But can you do that movement subconsciously? Can you do it regularly or all the time with the ankle, no quadding movement, no toes? Can you do it at different paces? Can you do it faster? Can you do it slower so the movement starts to come down to sort of 5 seconds each time you go up and down? Can you do 20 seconds? How slow can you go? And if you try it, you'll find that your foot goes because it hasn't got the ability to slow that movement down. So once you can do it at 4 different paces, so super fast, standard pace, which is what we've just done now, you've got slow pace and super slow pace, that's when you have control of just the ankle. Okay? We then need to be able to do that with the pelvis. Can we do the pelvic tilts? Can we do the lateral tilts of the pelvis? Can we then add in gravity and stand up and still do those tilts? We haven't put that to practice yet. We will do in a minute. Can you make sure the movement's not coming from above the belly button? So it's not you doing this and rib flaring, but it's actually a movement truly from the pelvis that you're skewered in this position. Scapula, do you know how to move the scapula? Can you do it at your different paces? Can you do it without the shoulder joint, so the glenohumeral joint here, moving, and then it's just the scapula and the glenohumeral joint glides backwards in that movement? Do we need these all for riding? Yes, we do. But if we can't use them individually, when we start to put it together and put your building blocks together, it plays a major part in looking at actually what is going on with your riding. So if I'm giving you multi-joint drills to do, but you can't use your quad and you can't use your toes, are they too complex for you? Yeah, because you don't know how to use one of your joints. The same with people with lower back pain. A lot of times that you get people with lower back pain is because they've got an ankle problem, a hip problem, which we've not covered today, or they don't know how to use the pelvis, or T-spine doesn't move, so you haven't got the ability to flare and close off the ribs and move it in all the angles it needs to be. And that's where we get the best performance out of people is when you can get them to learn individual movements and you can move individual joints. So you've got to take it back to basics. And you've got to practice it and practice it and practice it. And you've got to practice it a lot. So now we're going to do it together, but we are not going to do chicken impressions. Okay, so we are going, I'm going to move you again. You can come and sit back on Hugo. Come and sit on Hugo. So we are going to, you guys can stand where you are if you want to. Still can't see my feet. How far do I need to go? There we go. So we are going to bend our knees as if we're going into a riding position. We're not going to tilt forward. We're then from there, we're going to tuck the pelvis, we're going to straighten the spine, and we're going to squeeze the scapula. So we're going to stand in this position and see what happens. From that position, who's got their big toes up in the sky? No? Good. Who has got more weight on one foot than the other? Who is leaning backwards? We're here. So now from there, can you tuck the pelvis? Can you leave the shoulders where they are in a squeeze scapular position? Can you tuck the pelvis forward and backwards? Can you shift the weight left and right? Can you squeeze the scapula and retract the scapulas? And this is in a static position. Now imagine you're on your horse, your horse is walking, so we've got the forebeat of the pelvis that it's doing this. Can you now do all of those movements whilst the horse is moving? Probably not. So most of you that are riders, you're not allowed to walk. So sit and trot, canter, lope, all of these are definitely out of the question. But can you see why it's important to understand how to actually individually use the joints, and all of a sudden the multi-complex movements like what we've just done become really simple because actually you know how to put them all together. So what happens? How graceful did we look? We weren't too bad here. Couldn't see what was going on at home, but yeah. So what this is all looking at is your proprioception, which is the awareness of your body in space. So we've looked at, as we've sat on the floor, we've looked at, do we know where our ankle is? So can we step over the line and back? Ish, we can, but it takes quite a lot of concentration. Do we know when we touch something, where that is on our body? So when we've just tried to move our ankle and then we've touched the top of our ankle and all of a sudden that movement's got better, what do you think our touch sensation is like on the top of our ankle? It's probably fairly poor. And is it because we wear socks, we wear shoes, we wear boots, we wear wellies all the time, that actually that area of the skin doesn't get a lot of stimulation? So do you know what? Sitting at home at night time, rubbing your feet, try it with a piece of paper in your hand, try it with a kitchen tea towel on your hand, try different surfaces, try different things to actually stimulate that sensation and watch what that does for your motor movements. Proprioception then goes on to your awareness of how to move a limb, and we look at it in closed chain, which is when it's touching the floor or it has a contact point, and we look at it in open chain, so when it is just hanging in the air. Hanging in the air, you've obviously got the control of what it would be when you're stood. When it's on the floor, it's more like what we're doing when we're riding, but you've then got body weight that comes into the equation with it, okay? So it's really important we do learn about our proprioception because it's really key, because if we're unaware of where our body is, how do we ask for a gait change with our horses? If we can't sit straight, if we can't put ourselves into a certain position, we're riding a circle to the left and we're asking for a circle to the right, it's going to be very different left to right, which then that isn't going to help our horses at all. So it's really key for you to be able to put that work in whilst you're on the ground. So the question is, where do you start? With what we've done today. I could give you thousands and thousands and thousands of exercises, but keep it simple. Neuro stuff is simple when you strip all of the complicated terminology and everything else out of it. So start with neurosymmetry. That is your steps forwards and steps backwards. So draw a line, use your kitchen towels at home, and literally go with your heel toes first. Can you go heel toe, toe heel, over a line and back? Get the control on that. Wait for the kettle to be boiled. They don't take very long. Do 10 and then go off and do something else. Whilst you're waiting for the water buckets to fill, go with the other foot. Fit them in your day. You will find that it's much more effective than you trying to say, right, here's my rehab time. Lottie told me to do this. This is what I'm going to do. Here's my hour. Actually, I've not fed the horses. We've had the vet. We've now got to poultice something. And actually, I've run out of time. I need to go to bed because I'm up at 5:30 tomorrow to then do it all again. Whereas actually, if you're doing it whilst you've got those 30-second breaks in your day, you'll get so much more done. Okay. Clearing individual movement maps. So we've covered 3 joints today. There's obviously lots of us. We can then separate them all out, and we've looked at very basic planes of movement. So can we do up and down, in and out? All of our body parts need to be able to do different things. So we need to have circles, we need to be able to have counterbalance, we need to have movement. So it's really important that actually we start to clear up individual movement maps, but the more you understand how to clear their movement maps, when you have an injury, you can do your own body reset. You don't have to go for rehab because you're not sure what you need to do, you're not sure what the right exercises are. You've already got them because you've cleared your maps to start with, so you can start to see where you've got back to. And when you go in, NHS system is the worst, unfortunately, at the moment, because if you go in and you have ankle surgery, you have to wait till you get to a certain point before they say, this is exactly when you can do this exercise, but you might actually be ready for it early because you're stronger, because you've done some certain stuff beforehand, but you're in a cycle of where you need to go. Your body is your own nervous system, and it's got its own ability to make decisions for itself. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong, but it means that you might be able to get there sooner, okay? So you need to be able to make sure that you fix the injuries that you have and come up with, because I can't promise you're not going to injure yourself. You then need to combine those movement maps. So actually, so wrist is another one. So wrist, can I flex my wrist? And then can I go up and down in that? Whilst I'm doing that, can I do my flexion of my hip? Can I multitask? Actually, it becomes quite hard. You need to be able to combine all of those movements, because when you're rising, if you come to a jump, you need to be able to make a decision, you need to be able to correct, you need to be able to pull back, put in an extra stride, ask for a shorter stride. You need to be able to combine so many different movements, same with the dressage test, same with riding a horsemanship pattern. You have to combine them all, but without thinking. So if we have to do these thinking, do you think it happens when we're riding? There isn't any subconscious element that is able to come in. We just hope and hold. And what it tends to be is that the body tenses and then holds on and grips through the inner thigh. Okay? This is the key bit. Practice, practice, practice. It takes 1,000 to 10,000 reps for something to be subconscious. And that's why it's so important. Well, you do more steps in a day. So fixing walking is one of the key things that we do here, because you get that quite quickly. That gets quick gains, which we like quick gains. But your ankle mobility, you need to sit there whilst you're watching TV at night time with the ankle going. As soon as you can add in repetitions to get that, the quicker you will get a response for this. The more injuries you've had, or the older the injury, the closer it takes to repetitions to get up higher. Again, there isn't a number, it's so big because everybody is different. That's that. And that's my waffling for today. Because when I was looking at it, I could talk for hours, as I'm sure you could tell, on neurology. There's things like, so I will let you come and ask me questions, and I'll come and have a look on the because I can see the chat sections going on Zoom. But there's things like, there's a hierarchy of things that the brain likes. So if your visual system's off, I did a talk on that the other day, if your visual system's off and your vestibular system is off, it won't care what proprioception does, because it doesn't trust you because of the first two. So sometimes if you've had a concussion and you've had an injury to the eye, or you've had an issue with the eyes, or you've had an ear infection, or you're poor of hearing, they will play parts before your proprioceptive. So if you are finding that you're doing exercise after exercise after exercise and the proprioceptive stuff isn't working, it's probably a hierarchy thing, and it's the way that the brain starts to process it. One of the main reasons being is eyes are closest to the brain, but nerve system wise, when you've got time, Google a picture which is called homunculus. It's a picture of a really, really funky, cool man. I'll show you three in a minute. And there is a female one, but I've not yet found it. But it basically shows you what your brain thinks you look like based on percentage that it takes up. It's a really funny man. He's got huge eyes, he's got huge lips, he's got massive ears, and he's got a body that's about this big. He is not in proportion at all, but it shows you the areas that your brain likes. Now, the eyes are huge, both in the sensory map and the motor map. So those are two key areas that you can start to get lots of movement. But actually, in the eyes, a lot of the muscles in the eyes is 1 neuron to 1 muscle fiber. In the hands, it's like 1 to 400. In the feet and the quad is like 1 to 10,000. So, and that's because of the dexterity, the movement that we need to be able to get through those positions. But they will majorly get affected because of that amount of neural response, or that, like the, what's the right word? Acuity that you need for them they're the ones that go first, which is why when we have concussion, our eyesight tends to be the thing that goes, our hearing goes. We end up with post-concussion syndrome. Okay, so any questions from you guys, and then I'll come and have a look on Zoom. No? They're all just smiling at me. Right, let's come and have a look. So I've got stuff in the chat. Let's have a look what's in the chat. I can't work out why I can't hear. I think that's been sorted. I'm being sabotaged by a puppy. I don't think I can help with that one. Is there a time that we do this for? Which exercise was that for, Caroline?
It was just actually for really any of them, Lottie. Like do you just do a timescale that's comfortable for the individual, or
so
do you guide them?
There is something that is called, what's the name of it? I've forgotten the name of the actual protocol. Basically, you, the easiest way, when you prescribe the exercise or when you do the exercises, it's based on how many you can tolerate and where your peak is. So there isn't a number, there isn't a magic number. There's not 10 times 3, there's not 30 of them, there's not 50 of them. Each individual has a peak. And basically what they do is they have a peak where they start at the bottom, and in it, they will have where the more you do, the better you go up. And then you'll get to this point where you start to tolerate it and you get the best results from it. And then you'll start to have a negative impact. And it's similar to describe it with dose response in, that's what it's called, with paracetamol. So it's a really easy way to describe it with tablets. If you only take a third of a tablet that you've been prescribed and you've been told that you need to take 2 of them, you're not going to have much response. But the more that you take of it, so if you take half, you'll get a better response. If you take 4 halves, so 2, the dose that you've been told to take, you will get the best response. If you take 10 of them, you're going to have a downward spiral afterwards. But you've got to find what that right basis is. And unfortunately, with medicine, and I'm not saying go and take paracetamol or anything like that, I am not advocating that at all, but you'll find some people can tolerate 3, and some people can only tolerate 1 on 1. Because of body size, because of how your metabolic system works, because of how your body reacts to those tablets. So it's the same with exercise. It's thinking of it as a dosing and as a prescription on what is going to be the maximal for that person is. So I'm going to go through, I didn't actually do the reassess and assess and reassess. So I'm going to show you that because it's a really good way to tell you whether you're at the right dosing with the exercises.
So you liken it to like your sweet spot and like your thresholds, really, is what you would do. You liken it to like your an individual's threshold or the sweet spot for them.
Yeah. So you're looking for that sweet spot, but that sweet spot might be 30 repetitions now. But in 20 minutes time, it might be 2 repetitions. And in an hour's time, it might be 5 repetitions. So that constantly changes. So it's really difficult to say this is the exact number, but what you can do is use this test and retest. And I would always do it in sort of 5 to 6 is what I tend to do. And then you retest. Okay. So what I would do is there's loads of different things that you can do as a retest. But for example, I would put your feet together. If you've got bad back, this is not the best one for you. I'll show you another one. Put your feet together and go down, keeping the knees locked out. How far down can you go to touch toes? So have a practice, have a go. And then just take your note of where you're at. We're now going to do the toe pull exercise. So where we took the toe behind us and we pushed that into the floor. So you're going to push that down. You're going to hold it for 5 seconds. Use it for balance if you need to.
So I'm standing on that foot, that's why.
So use the wall. Good. And then switch sides. Do the same on the other side. Keep pushing. So you have that down. So that's sort of 5 seconds. Put your feet back together and retest and see where you get to. See how it feels.
Right to the floor.
Right to the floor. So gained range. Gained range.
Tiny bit.
Tiny bit. Okay. Some people would do that. And if the ankle was threatening, they would lose range. So these guys will gain, I don't know what you've done at home. So they would actually get less range. So that would say that they've held that for too long. Whereas actually here, we've all had a good response. So I would say, right, okay, now let's try for 8 seconds. Let's see how we get with an 8-second response, because there'll be a certain time that they'll be down there for, or they'll be doing that exercise that all of a sudden the body says, I don't get any better. Or if they're there, if they stand in that position for an hour, they're probably going to get up and their ankle's going to be quite stiff afterwards. But there will be a time of where they start to go backwards with it. So it's finding that, and it changes based on where you sit on the parasympathetic nervous scale. So, and that's why the CO2 tolerance test, so looking at how chemically you are and where your sympathetic nervous scale is sitting, starts to tell you how long to do your exercises for. If that sort of answers your question in a really rubbish way.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Sorry. Then we've got, I have to go because we're finishing at the yard. Very informative. Okay, so wishes. So this is a really interesting comment from you, Caroline, about so very informative talk. Wish they would cover this much better in undergraduate physiotherapy courses. I didn't learn enough about it until I worked across the broad range of departments, especially for STIB clinics, neurology and pain management. So because of how science is, and because how hard it is to change protocol, it's really difficult to get things like this into university. I do quite a lot of work with Teesside University in the sports therapy department on actually trying to have a lot of students come through here and see what we do. Because I've changed, because I can keep up with science, and because I've got all my education at the minute from America, which is probably another 3 or 4 years ahead of where we seem to be in the UK, a lot of the stuff that we're finding isn't able to be applied. It then comes to the UK, and then it takes 3 or 4 years before it can put it into practice. So it's then 10 years out of date, and it's brand new to that person at that time. And that's why, it's one of the reasons why I'm in private practice. I don't do any insurance stuff. I'm a sports therapist anyway, even though we can do certain bits. But it's all about education. The more people we can educate and more people can understand, actually you can start to question stuff that you're learning at university. But that's a whole big picture. That's going to take time. So yeah, I hope that answers. Any other questions on Zoom? No? Any more questions from you guys? No? I will leave you to it. Have a think. You will go and digest it all if I haven't exploded your brains, and drop us any messages if you need to. You can message me on Facebook, you can message me through my email address, drop us a text, whatever is the most easiest way. I have got some more talks that are coming up, and there's a few other bits and bobs that's coming out. So if you've enjoyed it, we'll do the same. So we'll put it on in clinic and on Zoom, so you can all enjoy the information. I will also be putting the link out. I don't know what the Zoom's going to look like, but it will go out on, I think I'm going to upload it to YouTube, so you guys can watch it on YouTube and watch it back if you want to go back through the information. Okay, super. Right, I'm going to say bye to Zoom. We'll see you later.